Good evening, everybody. My name is Raymond Newsom, and welcome to episode 1 of Death Scenes and Cemeteries. Tonight is obviously the very first episode. We are talking about a couple of interesting things. Well, I found them interesting, so I thought I'd share them with you. And the first topic for the night is something that is actually fairly local as far as state-wise goes. It is called the Vampire Cult Murders. And it began in Murray, Kentucky. What happened was there's a gentleman named Rod Farrell who got obsessed with the game Vampire the Masquerade. It's a tabletop game just like our D&D, a few of the others. It's a role-playing game. And he became obsessed with it and started his own quote-unquote vampire clan. What's interesting about this is they actually went to a place that they called the Vampire Hotel, located in the land between the lakes there, here in Kentucky, and it was also called Hotel California. It's just a rundown old building where teenagers like to run and hide and hang out, and they would go full ritualistic with it, such as drinking each other's bloods. Except Sean. But they would drink each other's blood. They would take and, perform sacrifices, all kinds of stuff. And they had, several friends throughout the country. One's name was Miss Windorf, whose name was, I forgot. I forgot her name. I apologize. Oh, her name was Heather Windorf. And she lived in Florida at the time. And Rod and a couple of others decided that they were going to go to Florida to take and free her from what she quoted as living in hell with her family. At this point, Rod had reestablished himself, at least amongst his friends, as a 500-year-old vampire named Visago. Fast forward to 1996 when they decide to act upon their plans, and they, work their way down to Florida to take and free Heather from her binds to her family. They snuck in through an unlocked garage and found a crowbar as they, entered the house. Mr. Windorf at the time was sleeping, and Rod beat him in the head and the face with the crowbar until he never, he stopped breathing because he didn't even have a chance to wake up. Enters a few minutes later. His then wife comes in. Her name was Naomi. According to Rod, he was going to let her live, but she took and threw hot coffee on him, which angered him, and then he beat her to death as well. The fun fact about that is we don't know if that's actually true or not because no one has verified his story. But he also wound up with a scar that was in the shape of a V from coffee, or he might have carved it in himself. I am not sure on that point. But he added dots along the V to to represent how many members of his clan there were. So all of his friends that, fell into the vampire clan, he put a dot along the V to represent them. Um, they took off and escaped through 4 different states and wound up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where another member took and called her grandmother in South Dakota, hoping for money because they had run out of money for anywhere to stay. And she was hoping that the grandmother would help her out. However, the grandmother called the police, and they arranged for them to take and show up to a local Howard Johnson motel, where the police were waiting for them and handcuffed them and took them to jail. Eventually, they were extradited back to Florida, where Rod Farrell became the youngest person in Florida to ever be on death row. Eventually, that was thrown out, and he is now serving a life prison sentence. Sorry, technical issues, or more like nerves. How's everybody doing tonight? I got a whole 3 people watching, which is cool. I appreciate y'all jumping in. Hi, Terry Wolf. Welcome to the show. We're discussing vampire cult murders. You probably know that story from the 90s, which started out here in Kentucky. But Rod is still in jail, and apparently it appears that he got married last year, which is, I don't understand that, but that is not for me to understand. I'm not judging. I'm just saying I really don't understand it. I'm doing awesome. I'm struggle busting through this first episode. I'm sure it'll get easier at the first couple, but yeah. So that's what we're talking about tonight. Terry said she knows about that. We're discussing, okay, apparently I got kicked somewhere, but we're going to continue on at least for a little bit longer. I probably don't have too long to be on here. The other thing I wanted to discuss was the movie Suspiria. And I don't mean the movie that came out in 2018. The original Suspiria came out in 1977. It was directed by Dario Argento, who is a favorite of mine. And it was based on a book. But the fun part about that movie was it was set in Germany, where an American dancer arrives to, study at an academy for dance. The dance is a cover for a cover of Witches. And the whole point of Death Scenes and Cemeteries is to discuss, how these people died. The opening part is the main character's name is Susie O'Bannon. She arrives late to the dance studio. They won't let her in due to the time of the night, so she has to go to a friend's house to their apartment. But as she's coming up to it, another dancer is running away from the studio. And in the process, she winds up getting strangled or getting beat, dragged up to the roof, and dropped through a glass, dome above the apartments where everybody stays, with a noose around her neck and just dangles. In the process, the one that Susie's staying with had run out to take and tell everybody that something was wrong, and a glass shard takes and drops from the ceiling and kills her in the process. Whereas it continues on, and Susie actually enters the academy the next day, and nobody really talks about the whole situation of two people dying. They ignore it. And shortly after, there's an incident where the piano player is fired due to his dog, you know, barking at another gentleman that was at the dance studio. He was fired. The dog had tried to attack him. Well, as they're leaving that night, a mysterious force is stalking the piano player. The dog turns on him and rips his throat out. As we get closer to my favorite part of the entire movie, because I'm a sick individual who loves horror films. Um, there, there's there is a scene later on in the movie where a girl is trying to escape the force that is coming after them, and she ends up in a room full of old piano wire. Mind you, she's dressed for night. She's trying to escape the best she can, but she keeps getting tangled in this piano wire, which anyone who has experienced piano wire or, guitar strings, whatnot, it is all sharp as can be. Um, and she's getting cut throughout her struggle to get through this piano wire. And as she gets to, yeah, thank you, Terry, for the backup for tonight. Um, she gets almost to the end there, and then two hands come through the wall and wraps a piece around her neck, and almost completely decapitates her with the piano wire. Yeah, like I said, that is one of my favorite scenes. I am a sick individual. What can I say? But of course, the only one that's really suspicious of any of this has been Susie the whole time. And eventually she, comes to realize that there's something going on in the background. Hi, Susan. Welcome to the party. We're discussing Suspiria, the original, and not the remake from 2018 or sequel or whatever it was supposed to be. I'm not dogging the movie. I just prefer the original because, it had a specific flair to it that only Argento could bring to the movie. Sick no, twisted yes. I like that. I like that, Sean. I like that. Yep. Sick no, twisted yes. Um, I probably won't be on here much longer, but Susie eventually gets very, very suspicious, whereas no one else really is, and she starts hunting down these other members of the faculty, which is also the Coven of Witches, and kills them one by one until she gets to the headmistress, who at this point has lost most of her power based on the fact that, the rest of the students have run off at some point and the building itself is starting to crumble. And she had to fight hallucinations and everything else throughout this situation until she finally ends the headmistress, who is, of course, the head of the coven, and is able to escape herself before the school, burns down to rubble. as we got Sean and Susan saying hello back and forth. I'm excited to see everybody that actually popped in. You know, the system I'm using and stuff is very limited as far as what I can do. So I'm making the best that I can with it. I'll probably go searching again for a whole different system before next week. Hopefully, I find one. If not, I'll be back on this one. We'll see. Um, so, how many people have actually seen the original Suspiria, if anyone? Yes, no, maybe? Because unless you really go digging for it or have had somebody who has, contact with the movie and stuff, a lot of people haven't heard of the original Suspiria. I, fortunately or unfortunately, had the. You have not. It is definitely a fun one to check out. Um, I'll see if I can find where to take and find said movie. That way, if it's free or anything, you can check it out. Zumo Play says appears to be the only place that actually has the original right now. But I'm sure you could go on, yeah, YouTube, and there are a few different versions of it that's up. So you can find the actual original Suspiria on YouTube for free. If you're a horror fan, I highly suggest it. It's like I said, it's a lot of fun. Um, I've watched it probably one too many times. But next week I do already have my plan for next week as far as what I'm going to take and talk about. I just had to find my lovely list here. Next week I figured I'd go double header because a lot of people have seen Psycho, especially even the original Psycho. Um, and I wanted to take and discuss the gentleman that was partially it was partially based on, which I have a few friends know who I'm talking about, and that is Mr. Ed Gein. Um, Ed was a very fascinating character, so I can't wait to take and discuss that gentleman, as well as like I said, Psycho was based off of Ed. Um, Texas Chainsaw Massacres was based off Ed. There was a few others too, but so that's going to be fun. Then by episode 3, I'm going to be talking about John Wayne Gacy and the remake of 13 Ghosts. I have seen the original. I'm going to discuss the remake because, let's face it, it's a lot of fun. Um, Matthew Lillard really knocked his role out of the park on that one. And then episode 4, well, we'll save that as a surprise for later. But because I am one of those people that can't dawdle and have a lot more anxiety than I admit, I'm probably going to cut it soon. If anyone has any thoughts, questions, ideas, I would love to hear from you all. All right. I'm just trying to give everybody a minute to type if they were typing. But yeah, Suspiria is definitely a fun go-to from the 1970s. 70s and 80s horror really had zero fucks to give because they did not limit themselves to anything. They just straight up, we are going to kill everybody in the most gruesome manner possible, especially foreign films, which this one, Argento is an Italian director. Thank you, thank you. Um, I've got some other foreign ones that I'll probably discuss later on down the road. A lot of those are banned in several countries, but what's the point of talking about things if people have to search for them in order to watch them? Because I like giving out homework just as much as my mentor and teacher. So everybody gets to have fun with that one. We'll discuss it whenever it gets closer. I haven't decided when I'll bring those topics up. But until next week, I will see you all. Hopefully, I'll be a little bit less nervous and a little bit more with it. I'm used to having a co-host, and going solo is kind of new for me, but we'll figure it out together. Thank you all for coming in, and have a great night.